Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ventures. I'm excited about this episode with Kyle Sanders and Patrick Lowndes. We talk about all things product at a scale that we don't typically talk about on this show. So what's unique about these two individuals is that Kyle has been an intrapreneur for multiple organizations, and he's led teams to build products and managing the product process as well as communicating with marketing. There are a lot of insights that he has. And Patrick, you may remember from episode 12 of this show, he started and sold a company into ServiceNow, the company where Patrick and Kyle work, all from idea to acquisition, all within 3 years. So I'll refer you back to episode 12 to hear that story in depth. But in today's conversation, we talk about how to grow a product team and effectively communicate with the engineers, with the marketers, with all the different stakeholders involved, so that for the entrepreneurs who are listening in, as you're building a team, you have to wear multiple hats. It's really an impossible job. But as you wear multiple hats, often when you're first starting a company, you don't actually know what those hats are. You're just sort of intuitively going about doing it. So in this episode, we actually talk about at scale, what are those roles? What are the different aspects about how to run an effective management team to build and grow a product. So if you're listening to this episode, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com, and there you'll see more extensive show notes to the things that we talk about today. And if you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Patrick and Kyle. All right, Kyle, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you back, Patrick. There are a number of questions that we've had from your previous episode, a number of questions around all things product at a startup scale and enterprise scale, and things that can be learned from enterprise to help founders, both that are independent and founders inside enterprises, these intrapreneurs. As my definition of founder continues to expand, I'm excited to share some insights from the two of you. But Patrick, would you mind teeing us up, maybe say a little background about you for those who don't know you, and we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. The audio should be fine, but for those watching the video, it might be a little choppy. But as a founder of VendorHawk in 2015, 2016, we ran that startup for about a year and a half, 2 years, really through Techstars. And we had our exit in 2018 to ServiceNow. And we just passed our 3-year anniversary of that acquisition. And some people are pretty, shall I say, bitter about an acquisition to a big enterprise because of just all of what that means, kind of killing your product baby, as it were, and, giving you a bunch of heartache with working inside of a big company. And there has been some of that with ServiceNow, but I think the headline, the narrative for today is how much innovation continues to occur at a large enterprise that's pretty high growth. But also the product management scale that we deal with is not as simple as get user feedback, prioritize the features, and define what the next set of roadmap. I mean, that's a simplistic way to think about product management. So hopefully today you'll hear a little bit more of the flavor of how do you scale beyond just your 20 or 30 small dinky customers. How do you service the biggest customers in the world, and how do you support a really large and growing team, so you're not just the subject matter expert that is the only one who could answer all the questions as kind of a PM. So I'm looking forward to today's episode, and kind of Kyle is someone that I respect highly at what he does. And we have different perspectives inside of the behemoth that is ServiceNow. So maybe he could share a little bit more about what is our company that we're at right now, and hopefully it's helpful for founders looking to scale.
Yeah, thanks. So, hi everyone. I'm Kyle Sanders. So, I work with Patrick at ServiceNow, as you mentioned. So, ServiceNow is it's a workflow and platform company. So, we help our customers basically automate and manage any type of workflow within their enterprise. So, I specifically work within our employee workflows, which we work closely with our customers who are helping to provide a better employee experience and service their employees. And I don't come from a traditional startup background, but a lot of what we do, because as Patrick mentioned, we are a very innovative company, and especially within our group, and very fast growth. It is kind of in a way, it's sort of a startup within a much larger company. So comes with its own additional resources and great benefits there. But I think we also have that agility that you would typically get with a startup, and some of the innovation and all the additional support and resources there too.
Awesome. Well, welcome, guys. I'm excited to have this conversation. So I'd love to start just by sort of teeing up the problem. We get a lot of questions from founders that are curious about how to balance the dance of product and growth, and how, as a small startup, how to do the what Patrick just referred to as the simple things, how to actually collect feedback from users, really understand your market well enough, really understand your customer profiles, and then translate that into some kind of management process to be able to work with your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 engineers and UI designers, UX people to pull that off. And so I refer listeners and people who are watching to some of the previous episodes where we dive into a lot of the nuances, the technical nuances at the early stages there, a lot of the nuances about how to play with growth and the marketing operations stack around that. And so for this episode, I think for the two of you, the first question is really, when you're at the stage where you have a product, you have an early team, and you need to figure out how to start growing that team, what do? How do you even think about it as a founder, as an entrepreneur? How do you even think about that process when all of a sudden you have a great problem where, we need to scale?
I would kind of want to let Kyle go first because he's got a really timely story with the pandemic and a way that we responded to that. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that, Kyle?
Sure. Yeah. So a little more background on my team, kind of to help tee it up, is that we work on the outbound product management. So we are not working with typically the development teams, and we have an inbound team that we work closely with, who's actually defining the roadmap, defining requirements. We're sort of the in between. We work as the voice of the customer. So we work a lot with our customers to actually understand what are their needs, how's it resonating, almost in a way, almost from a consultative approach. And as we grew, as Patrick mentioned, we did release some apps to help support customers with how they're bringing their employees back into the workforce. And as with anything that we release, there's a lot of great customers out there already willing to use these products and continue to grow. So when there's extreme growth and there's a lot of customers, really it was sort of an all hands on deck. And with us, when we're trying to look at what are the resources, it's really what's best for our customers. We need to make sure that we're supporting our customers. When we're looking at kind of how do we scale as this grows, it's not just looking at how can we engage with our customers, but it was a lot of what type of enablement do our customers are they going to need. There's a lot of as we're growing, there's a lot. We can only scale so much with a certain size team. So for us, it was a lot of, we want to make sure that we are enabling our customers and giving them the right knowledge to help them self-service, as well as making sure that we are engaging and really understanding their needs. With a quick, rapid release cycle, it was imperative that we really get customers' feedback, understand what their needs are, because that's how you're going to continue to evolve the product and be agile with what we're building.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if I could jump in too, Will. So Kyle's point is an important one. we're in this episode, we're assuming that you're already doing really high quality kind of lean startup basics as a product manager, and you really understand the customer. You've been able to, you work closely with your engineers on prioritizing what is that experience. But the thing that we've tried to deal with assume you've got that and you're thinking, how can I actually enable customers to succeed? The first inklings of this when I was at VendorHawk was, oh shoot, we don't have anyone doing customer success, anyone who's helping our customers succeed after we sell to them.
Right.
And so the sales reps are responsible for selling, which is great when you start ringing the cash register. But as the CEO, what was going through my mind was, oh no, like we better make sure that we actually delivered on our promise. And that is a big part, what we see. So I'm in the IT asset management business unit here at ServiceNow. So the big thing for us is we got acquired. I can share for our small company, we only had 20 customers when we got acquired, and a handful of those were crossover into ServiceNow. But now we have a very, very large customer base 3 years later, using our product and some other products. And so what that forced me to do, kind of moving from, oh no, we have to figure out how to enable customers. But what Kyle just said there was, you need to understand as a product manager, where are the gaps and the sticking points with your customer using your product. If they're not getting value within the first 30 days or 60 or 90 days, you need to quickly assess what's wrong with the process. And what's interesting, Will, a point I want to bring up is, and Kyle, I'm sure you feel this too, as you start to scale up the number of sales reps, as a product person, you now have two customers to be concerned with. One is the end customer. The other customer is the sales team, right? So if they don't know how the product works, they don't know how to, set expectations properly, then it's going to be really hard to make sure that your customers ultimately end up, using the product as best as they can. So I don't know if I'm sure when you introduced this brand new set of apps, what was it like, trying to enable, and we got thousands of salespeople here at ServiceNow. So what was it like for you to try to rapidly enable to make sure the sales customers, if you will, were served?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is, you're serving two groups. It's the customers, and then it's at least in our case, for our size, is that you're doing the customers, you're doing the sales, but you're also doing like our implementation. We want to make sure the implementations and those who are actually deploying this and making sure that it's successful, because if those aren't successful, it's going to give a bad impression of the product, and that's the last thing you want. But in terms of from the sales side, yeah, it's absolutely, because you have to understand the messaging, making sure that sales understands the need of it. What's the messaging for it? On what is the value proposition? How do you really kind of pitch this as, we know it's valuable to the customers, but how can we really make sure we're addressing the customer's need and unlocking kind of that value for the customer when sales is talking to it? How do they really make the most of this, and helping with the current environment where things were at, making sure that they truly understand how we're addressing it and the agility of it as well, and that's all kind of part of the discussion with their customers.
So one thing that I'm curious about, and those that are founders wearing multiple hats, is that they may not understand actually at scale how an organization is structured to effectively manage, to effectively execute, to effectively glean insights, to effectively measure results. So I'm curious, because the two of you have been saturated in this world for a while. Can you help educate founders? Like, at scale, you have this and this and this and this. How are things organized to actually execute something at this scale?
Okay, good question. So I think that for me, it's like, I mean, in a traditional startup, you're going to have one person wearing many hats. But the more that you can kind of focus on one thing, and you can really become great at that. So I think traditionally you have like your product marketing, who's going to be the best at really, there's a point where they sort of become the ones who are enabling sales with like, what's the messaging? How are we going to market with this? What's all the kind of go to market pieces that are needed going up to launch? You're going to have product management, which is, like I said, it's going to vary. Every organization's different. The way we address it is looking at kind of an outbound role of having that kind of voice of the customer facing type role. It helps to really be the liaison between some of the inbound work, and then also help to focus on some of the product initiatives, things like early adopters and things like that, being able to add additional focus without distracting from building the actual product. You want to make sure you have someone focused on making sure customers are using and getting benefits and values out of the great products that everyone is building. So those are the main areas that jump out to me, Patrick. What would you add?
Yeah. I reflect back on my time as a CEO, and I once had an investor tell me, your goal is to slowly but surely fire yourself from every job as you continue to scale the company. And I thought about that, and the answer, it started to make sense, but really, I remember mapping out, okay, I've got the product roadmap. I think I know what that is. I'm owning the sales team. I'm the VP of sales. I'm the VP of marketing. I got to know how to even get leads, let alone talk about what's going on. So even product marketing, that didn't even really register for me. And when you're less than 5 or 10 people in that first, because that's an extra person that's not actually selling out there necessarily. So for me, I had to think about get my first marketing hire who could actually give me good collateral, right? And then as you think of scaling up, imagine going from 10 to 20. Well, now I think customer success would have been our next couple of hires, when we realized like, oh crap, these customers need to get to value. I sold them, now they got to get to value. So Will, to answer your question, fast forwarding, we actually have a product marketing funnel and a team that all they do is go from brand awareness all the way down through the customer journey, from awareness to evaluate the consideration, evaluation, and then we get into actual decision, right? Am I going to make a purchase? And I find that with product management, that's where we need to step in, because your marketers are really good at messaging value and benefits, but oftentimes your salespeople need something that's going to help close the deal. It might be a proof of value, it might be proof of concept. And then even after they close the deal, how are they going to set up that first customer onboarding or implementation process? So the product management team actually should be the keeper of that knowledge on this is how you best use the product and how you best close the deal, use the product. And then at some point, when you have an early customer success team, they're going to become more of an expert than you are, which is good. And you fire yourself from being the customer success expert and you say, hey, how would you guys like us to better support, your ability? So in product, you're always thinking about scale and working on the business, where your sales folks, your customer success people, your marketing, they're working in the business. You're always at that next level trying to think about how do I make these people successful, learning from them, but also trying to serve them to be able to grow. But then you've got pricing and you've got legal and you've got go-to-market teams. And so at the enterprise, you do spend a lot more time, getting everybody on the same page. But the principles are the same. Is the customer getting to value through my team? And if not, it's on me to figure out how to help sales and customers and marketing be more effective. I like to tell my team, we're the grease in the wheels of getting customers to value. From the sales process all the way to renewal, cradle to grave, we are the grease. And if anything's not working, we have to troubleshoot. So that's a little bit of my soapbox on that topic. But I've just been learning a lot this last couple of years on that.
And the one thing I would add to that is like diving a little deeper into what you were talking about with having those customers, like as you're rolling it out and working closely with the customers and like the need for the customer success side of it, is that really what I found is working with the early adopters is so important, because that's where you're going to understand, is what we built actually meeting the customer's needs, or maybe it's like hitting 90%, but there's one little thing that's really kind of a showstopper. So understanding that, because the quicker you can learn from that, the quicker you can improve the product for when it does get to a much larger scale and some of the other customers are able to adopt it, it's immediately meeting their needs. And then you'll be able to partner with those customers to actually, one, make sure you understand their need, but also, Patrick mentioned, using those stories, understanding the value that they're getting out of it, because that's what's gonna help sales. Sales really, they love being able to tell a story, being able to have another customer sort of sell it and use their success story, whether it's from a marketing side, something that sales is able to kind of talk to, and really seeing like a real true to life story of how are other customers using this? How is this providing value? As opposed to kind of the typical marketing and the vision of it all.
Cool. Yeah, no, this is good. So then with that setup, the key question then for a very early stage company, let's say that they have a business person or somebody that's, wearing multiple hats around the business and operations and growth. And let's say they have a technical person who's thinking about product management, engineering, actually making the thing a thing, right? So you essentially have these two people. In light of what the two of you have seen now at scale, and how when you have multiple resources, what are all those different hats? The key question then is, how do you handle the people? How do you grow your team, and how do you think about your people composition? Because people, everything, those higher number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on a startup, as you're going through the process of firing yourself, what would the two of you recommend to that 2-person co-founder team when they're thinking about, and let's assume it's a B2B SaaS company, or really it probably could apply to any different revenue model, but how would the two of you advise that founder team?
Patrick, I'll let you take this one to start with.
Yeah, sure. I liked what Will, you and Jenna talked about earlier about her live fire experience. The point seems to resonate with me that you've got to have people that are skilled enough to be flexible in their growth. They're flexible to do multiple things. So in other words, I'll give you an example. I think he was the third sales hire, maybe the second sales hire at VendorHawk. He was starting out basically just doing account development rep stuff, but I hired him partially because he had a marketing background. So he knew how to analyze some SEO and think about some growth hacky kind of stuff. So while he was doing all of his cold calls, he also started showing up to our weekly, review meetings with SEO metrics. And so I was getting kind of a little bit of like 1.5 things with the same person. And so, and that same seller is again, so he wasn't just like only a salesperson, I'm going to stay in my lane. So I think what's critical is when you're interviewing for your first couple of hires is, are they good enough at the specific thing you need? I need someone to make 100 phone calls a day. And is he good enough for that? Check. Okay, great. But this other person is good at that, and they bring these other kind of skills to the table, right? And so you can't skip out. I've also made the mistake of hiring the generalist who wasn't great at the one thing I needed them to be good at, and that was a mistake as well. So I think the takeaway there is they've got to show competence in multiple areas, so that you really get the quote unquote mileage out of them, as you might. It doesn't sound that great to say mileage, but there's a lot of capacity that you want to develop in your team. And if they're of a kind of a one-track mind and everything has to be served to them, run away from those kinds of folks. You want people that are coming to you with ideas and even maybe a little outside of just their one role, right? So that would be how I would kind of advise Kyle on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think just the flexibility, having people who are just flexible and super passionate, tends to be, as they're passionate about the work that they're doing, they're much more willing to do kind of whatever's needed to help support and grow the company. So yeah, flexibility and just passion, I think, are two really, really important things as we look to grow the team. I think it's a little different when you're in a larger organization where you have more resources or more defined roles of people who are set to do things. But even when your team's growing and there's a lot of different needs within the team and new things popping up, it's the same. It's still, you need that flexibility, and you need people who are passionate to want to help and see the success of everything.
Yeah, and that's the question. At what point does it change, right? So if you're trying to hire people that have multiple skill sets, sufficiently good at the thing that you're hiring them for, and then they can add value as you grow, at what point does that change and you just need to hire people who are really good at this specific niche? Or does that never stop when you get to the scale that you two play at?
That's a good question. If you don't have you're usually, if you're early stage and you're only on your first round of, let's say, venture capital funding, $1 million goes away really fast, unless you're making money and you're profitable in 9 months, which then you probably should just say bye-bye to the investors at that point, just build your own unicorn. But for the other 99% of us, that money is going to go away fast. And so the thing that's important is to, when you realize that, hey, now let's say you land an A round, which was right at the juncture when we decided to go the acquisition route. Because again, we thought, wow, we get this immediate resource of team and brand and all this stuff to build the vision. I think, let's say you land the A or the B round and you're scaling. I think what's important there is just as if you're leading the company, what is my next milestone I'm trying to get to? If I'm at, let's say I'm at, $500,000 of ARR, and I'm trying to get to $2 million of ARR, what is the most effective skill set to get me there? Do I need more lead gen? Do I need better sellers? Right? Do I need to make sure, am I starting to have a customer churn problem? Right? Do I need to address that with more success resources? So I think, you're really milestone based, and unfortunately you're still kind of short term in your view, because you can't afford to be quite as grandiose, as somebody who's got, like a $4 billion revenue, machine cranking through, which is, ServiceNow publicly, makes a ton of revenue. So we can afford to have people in different levels. But I would just say it's milestone based, and that should probably drive the decisions for, is this person going to get me to my next milestone? And you've probably seen this, Will. It's always better to hire someone who's been there, done that. They know what it's like to go from, $500,000 to 2 or 3 million of ARR or something. So yeah, that would be my guidance.
Yeah. I think, to me, it's like looking at what are your goals, and kind of to Patrick's point around like what your timeline, like looking at your goals, and prioritizing, like what are you actually going to need to get to those goals in the right timing, and also realizing that there gets to a point where topic switching has a toll on people, and you lose productivity when you're kind of constantly switching between different tasks. And some people are great at it, other people not as much, and no one can do it fully. So knowing the toll that has, and being able to adjust when that becomes more detrimental to the team, or kind of being able to understand, okay, we're not going to get to this unless we have someone dedicated on this specific goal, or kind of focusing on, say, product marketing or certain niche of the market. So I think at that point within kind of a larger organization, and for us, that's how we always look at it, and then continuing to reevaluate those goals. Because when you're growing fast, it's easy to kind of keep going. but making sure that you're looking back to see, are you addressing the goals that you're looking at, and do you have the right resources or the right plan around where people are allocated.
So a nerdy business management question: How can product management effectively empower and help the product marketing team do their job better?
Yeah, I think for me, we're like a direct funnel into them. So we're the ones who are working with the customers. We're hearing what's resonating with them. We're hearing the customer stories and certain value that they're getting, and who's doing the really cool things that we want to highlight from a marketing standpoint. And for us, I mean, we've got like I said, I mean, we work hand in hand really just to make sure that what we're hearing, we're able to pass along to them. We're that funnel of not only just from how's the product resonating and how's the messaging going, but also who's our customers, who are our top customers that we really need to line up, and who should we help prioritize marketing their efforts so that they can focus on the ones that we feel are going to be more impactful for other customers to hear. Because like I said, that is part of what sells, is being able to hear those customer stories. And if we can help them marketing prioritize their efforts of go after these ones, these are the ones that are impactful. They follow our message, they follow our vision. It's really going to resonate with a lot of customers. I think there's a lot of value there.
Now, within that, there's a very natural connection from thinking about product marketing, needs ammunition, with customer references, right, and customer lighthouse stories, right? The way it works in our business unit is we're always looking at our basically our pool of referenceable customers, and not only am I kind of giving longer term direction on the strategy of where we're taking the product, as we continue to evolve it and develop it, and what are we allowed to say right now to the public versus what kind of just needs to be internal. We really need to bring in this element of customer success. I don't think it gets enough attention, especially if you're listening to this and you love building products. Pay attention to what I'm about to say right now. If your product is not giving enough value to customers for what they're paying you, then the value exchange is broken, right? Then they're not going to renew. So a really important, roadblock that startups need to get over is, how do I get my customers on my kind of half-baked product? How do I get them to enough value that they feel good about paying me for the annual subscription or the monthly subscription? And then the proof point is they're willing to actually use their logo and their story and their voice to talk about it. And so you say, well, how do you understand that? So one of the things we've learned, I saw this at my pay scale, the startup I was a salesperson at, but we had a product advisory council. We have that at ServiceNow as well, just in a bigger scale. And so if you don't have this inner group of customers telling you, and they should be, giving you strategic direction where to take the product, they all should be giving you gaps between, hey, I was sold this, but I'm actually just getting this, right? And as a product management person, you can get so excited about all the new things you want to do, but you know what? Who cares if your customers aren't able to look like rock stars? And so, that's Kyle, I see you nodding, but that's something where if you can't make your customers look like rock stars because of what they've done with your product and easy justification of ROI and renewal, then you've got some serious gaps, not just in features, but maybe even how you support and helping customers get to value, right? So I just want to make that statement pretty strong. Get a product advisory or customer advisory board to let you know where your shortcomings are, as well as to let you know what direction to go. But sorry, on the soapbox again, but that's something I'm just realizing is so important, but it's not very sexy to talk about because it's not building a shiny new feature.
Yeah, and I think when you do that, you build a lot of trust with those customers, kind of letting them into helping with the roadmap, helping to validate some of what you're doing. And like I said, you get great trust out of them. So they're the ones who they will speak on your behalf. They will take sales calls and reference calls, things like that, and really help with that. They become kind of more vested into the product and feel that they're playing a role in the innovation, which they really are.
Yeah, that's good. So how if you set up a board, who do you select? A two-part question. Who do you select to be on that board? And how do you effectively communicate with them? Even how you effectively communicate to the product marketing side. Do you do standing meetings? Do you use some kind of asynchronous tool? Do you use email? Like, how do you pull that off?
Yeah, so I'll go first. For us, it's a lot of, again, making sure that they're engaged. So we'll meet with them kind of between monthly and quarterly. We've kind of tested out a few different options, but I think we're at the point where like we're meeting monthly. We have enough content from there, and they also start to look at it more of, these are their peers. How can they bring their challenges to their peers and see how they're doing? So it kind of becomes networking too for them. And so that's why we look to increase the frequency, but we really get them together. We'll talk through roadmap. We'll talk through some of the items that we're looking at, but also a little bit of show and tell. Let the customers show their peers. Let them show off a little bit of what are the cool things they're doing. They've got really the voice of the product team here, and really being able to understand their needs kind of at this scale. So as far as cadence, that's how we do it. And as far as picking customers, I think it's a mix of both. Like everyone will probably say like, who are your highest value customers? Who's paying you the most? But I mean, it's also who's the innovative ones? Who are the ones that are very outspoken, and who are the ones that you look at and think, these are the ones, like, they get it. They know what they're doing. They understand our vision. They're aligned with us. Like, they're the ones who we want to partner with, because they'll be right alongside us as we're continuing to innovate.
Yeah. And that's important. Some customers, if you're a small startup, you might be saying, let me just get all my customers into a room, to be honest, right? I've been there. But when you get to the point where you can actually pick which ones you want, we've, at our scale, we actually have about 20 or so customers that we have only one person from the customer. And then we have another 10 or 15 people that we add from engineering and sales and all of our some product marketing. And we go quarterly, for about 90 minutes. And we always have a customer share at the beginning, right? Because if we're not getting customers to value and they're not willing to share, then again, something's broken. Like, we're not actually doing a good job in serving the purpose of our intended vision or mission. So customers, force yourself to have customers share at every meeting. But then, we've tried to find ways to, we share all their emails with each other. And even just this week, we've broken out feature areas that we wanted more specific feedback on. So as your product gets more complex, you might find that one part of your product, there's a lot of feedback that you need. So we just asked our customers in our pack, which areas of the product you want to be like in a working group. And that just lets them have a little bit more tactical voice on what an experience should be like in part of your product. But at the same time, you need these customers telling us, what investments do I make for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months, the next 9 months? Because some of that you might have to start now developing partnerships, or maybe this goes into your next pitch deck. Like, we've heard from a ton of customers that we got to invest here, and we need to go raise some more money to do that. So these customers can even be critical to help you know where to take the product, not only just the specific points of feedback. So.
Yeah, and then I think also if you're getting this feedback from them and they are engaged, and like I said, you've built that respect with them and that trust, it's a bit easier to get them to be your early adopters, to get them to work with you, to really, let's be the first customer, let's be the one to start rolling this out, and their input's directly taken into some of this, so it's going to meet their needs more quickly out of the box, as opposed to waiting till future releases until it fully checks all the boxes for them.
That's a really, really good advice. Another topic is a common problem in a growing, really at a growing startup, and especially at enterprise scale, is people motivation. How do you keep the people that are as hungry and driven in an early stage startup when you get to a large organization? Because I've seen time and time again, the large orgs that I've worked with, there is a lack of fire in the belly. A lot of people sort of looking to transition to other jobs. They don't really like the culture. And so even being an intrapreneur in that kind of environment, it's hard to rally the troops and get the appropriate buy-in so that you can pull people together to execute something. From the two of you, from the perspectives that you have you run into, I mean, you don't have to get into too much detail, but have you run into this problem? And it'd be amazing if you haven't, but have you run into this problem? And if so, how do you address it as a manager and as a colleague in a larger organization?
Good question. Want me to go first?
Sure, I'll let you go take it first, and then got some thoughts.
You're going to kind of run into two different kind of buckets, in the enterprise of people. And oversimplification. I'm going to just go for it here. You can send Will feedback if you want. But I think the oversimplification is you have people that are just kind of happy to have their comfortable job, and they're happy to kind of be insulated by the big company perks, right? And so they're really not trying to ruffle too many feathers. They're not trying to go too fast. And every now and then, I run into those kinds of people, usually outside of the product group. They tend to be people that are kind of support roles. Occasionally you find people that you're like, you've been in this one product role for 8 years and you need to maybe a breath of fresh air. But then the other folks tend to be kind of the ones pushing the envelope. And those are the kinds that often, sales, the thing I love about salespeople is because they're on the front lines of hearing what the customers want, they're always bringing fresh ideas and why don't we do this? And this would be innovative. And so it's not just salespeople, but there are people all over the business, even in finance and legal, that are trying to figure out creative ways to do stuff. So I think that when you've got those, the point of motivation as product is to continue to bring back the stories of success and the value that you've given to your customers. That's got to be top of mind. I mean, with IT asset management, we're helping folks basically understand what they own, who owns it, and are they using it, most efficiently for their spend, right? And when you're looking at, do I lay off, 100 people, or do I cut, a bunch of software that's wasted? I'd rather save people's careers and go after, wasted software, right? And I'd rather tighten the latch on that. And there's some vision associated with that. So I'd say, what is that kind of human-driven, emotional vision that connects with people kind of at a gut level? Why is your product really that motivating and that exciting? And even if you're in a big company, think about the process optimization, think about the benefits. And so that kind of, in my experience, reminding people of that are kind of just sitting back, enjoying things, they're like, oh, that's why that guy is so passionate to get something done. It's like, well, yeah, I know you've got a process. Sometimes I don't really care about your process. I care about getting this thing solved for all these customers that badly need it solved. So help me come up with a way to get to point B as soon as I can, right? And sometimes just asking that, come up with the new path is kind of what you have to do to get some things done. That's some of what I found there.
Yeah, I would say as a people manager, I guess I've been fortunate enough where I haven't really had that issue yet. And I think part of it is, I mean, we talk about ServiceNow, and our company culture is amazing. I've worked at a lot of different companies of varying levels of culture and engagement, and like it is true that the culture really does affect your passion for the role and wanting and kind of that innovation. So when you have a company as innovative like ours, it just naturally bleeds into the rest of the team. Everyone feels that. And when I was talking earlier about it's important to look for passionate people, I mean, a lot of what we do, people are driven by the results. Like we see customers and all that they're able to achieve, and when we talk about making sure our products are providing value, like when we see the impact that we're having on customers, like that to me is motivating to our team. Like that's being able to see the impact our team has, because we are working directly with a lot of our customers and the product, and being able to see the impact it's making on customers as well as the product. Like the product is becoming more innovative because of direct things that we have done. And it's like we can make a clear line of customers who are then benefiting from that. So it's really rewarding to actually see that path, and that kind of the innovation, starting at innovation, going right into customer seeing value. So I know a lot of my team, that's what we look at, and that's how what's fulfilling to people is they want to get stuff done. They want to see the results, and it's pretty easy with the role that we play, being that kind of in between with the customer and the inbound developers.
It's good. So as a product manager, then what do you do when the customer's not happy? What do you do when you start seeing more churn? You're starting to see lack of engagement on your advisory board. You're starting to see things head the wrong direction. What steps do you take? What steps do you take as a manager?
Yes, to me, I think it's trying to be as proactive as possible to avoid those issues. Like looking at the data, looking at how customers are both buying as well as using. So looking at adoption metrics and what's working. Is it, Patrick mentioned before, is like, are you building something that no one's going to use, and making sure that you're looking at that, like really making sure that what you're delivering, customers are using, they're seeing value in it. Really, to me, that's the big thing. But when those situations do come up where customers are having concerns, that's where we work a little more closely with the customer. We give them a little more white glove service of, hey, let's work together, let's figure it out. We talked earlier about how important it is to educate sales and the implementation partner. So many of those issues may be stemming from that. It may have been oversold. It may have been implementation partner didn't know what they were doing, or they weren't up on the latest release. So maybe they implemented something incorrectly. So it may not necessarily be a product issue. It may be more of an implementation issue. It's something that needs to be could be a somewhat easy fix in terms of let's work together. Let's figure out where things are broken and how we can remediate it. It also then helps us, because if it is something that is a unique customer need that we didn't anticipate, let's get that into the roadmap. Let's figure out how can we address this in a future release. And again, usually if the customer sees that and we're working with them, and that like they're actually having influence in the product, that's a lot more impactful. Their voice is being heard. They're being able to adjust this. It's not just go create a ticket or go kind of a handoff. It is really a partnership with us. We want to make sure our customers are successful everywhere.
You hit on something really intuitive there, Kyle, with regard to when you know there's kind of something's not going well. One of the first things is to ask, is something actually broken or wrong in the product, or is it an outside force, like how you're using the product, right? Or maybe company politics that's keeping the customer from getting something done that they wanted to do with the product. So I think when you first are understanding something, there might be a specific bug and feature request to deal with. Obviously, getting engineers involved at the right time is important. But I'll give you an example. We were on a pretty a strategic customer, pretty large company, and they were 9 months into a deal with us, and saying like, hey, we didn't get what we thought, and so I in product management stepped in, and there was probably like 14, 15 people on the call, half from the customer, half from us. And I basically just had, kind of like a Word doc up, and I was going through, and we spent the whole first, like a 2-hour session, and just captured and literally typed out in front of them, this is what we're hearing is going on. So half the time is when you're trying to get in saving an account, understand the specific issues, and then we went slowly and validated each one. Is this right? Did I write that out correct? And by validating that the customer's been heard, some of those we identified, oh, so actually that's your internal team not wanting to do this. Yeah, that must stink. Like, can we help you with that? How can we get that? And so then someone else was kind of keeping action items down below on that same document. So what's important is separating product issues from usage issues in a way that they feel like, okay, this team listens to me. They know what my struggles are. And as much as possible, like Kyle said, that we're here for them to try to get them to a point of success and resolution. So that was a big example of where, someone just needed to listen and document and ultimately try to get them back on track where they feel like, hey, this was a good session. I feel like we're on the right track now. That's kind of how you want that call to end.
So from your learnings, Patrick, from the exposure that you've had the last 3 years being in a larger enterprise, what would you have done differently with VendorHawk? What from a people perspective, from a process and management perspective, from a sales perspective, what have you learned in a larger environment that would have been gold for you when you were running VendorHawk?
I think the biggest thing that would have changed is I would have had somebody working more closely with customers earlier. As the CEO and CTO, Brian and I joked, oh, we're the product mind meld. And then we started saying, yeah, we're also customer success, the two of us. And the problem with that was, as we got past that, even 10, 12, 15 customers, we didn't really know what was going on with were we driving customers to value. So if I were to do it again, I would have had somebody more focused on success earlier, probably maybe even before the first salesperson, to be honest. I think that's kind of a toss up. But I think we were waiting on that, thinking, oh, we'll take care of that. We'll make sure customers are getting value. But it kind of snuck up on us on our first couple of renewals, having some like, oh, well, that was, we renewed some customers and we were doing pretty well with, I'd say, a good chunk, but there were some that we clearly missed that we could have been working on and even putting new features in earlier. So I think we didn't bring in customer success and the voice of the customer early enough to make sure that we were going to actually scale other customers that over here we were selling, to get going. So that's probably a regret, that I would go back and probably change up the order of how I hired folks.
Yeah, you could probably, I imagine you could probably talk all day long on this topic. I think for Kyle, for you as leading teams with the organizations that you've worked with and do the entrepreneurial work, how has your management style evolved based on learnings from your earlier projects? Because I'd imagine a lot of managers kind of working their way through organizations might be able to learn a few things from you.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to where we were saying, like, at what point do you do that break of splitting roles? I think to me, looking back, like looking at what point do we adjust our style to help us grow and scale more? Because I think that when you're small, it's all about like fostering the relationships with those customers, growing those, working really hands-on. But when you grow to a much larger amount of customers, you can't do that unless your team is growing at the same rate. And oftentimes that's not the case. So how are you going to scale those efforts to make sure that those customers are still getting benefits and value from your team without actually being hands-on working with each and every one of them? So things like the product advisory console, kind of like a one-to-many type engagement, just more best practices and content and things like that that are more still engaging for customers, things that they would get in some of those kind of one-on-one sessions, but now they're getting it, you're putting it out to the larger customer community. It's something that all the customers can engage. So to me, I think that's been my learning, is that finding that right point of when is it too much where we need to start looking at scale, and how are we going to engage customers at this broader level to make sure that, like I said, they're still getting value from our team. We still want to engage with them. It's just at a different level.
That's good. So what resources would you recommend? Any books, any blogs, any podcasts out there, anything that you would recommend to people who are growing in their product management skills, who are playing the dance between product and marketing, who are growing companies in light of lessons learned from what you two have seen? What resources would you recommend?
Well, I mean, obviously this podcast, right? So I'd also say, like, not necessarily from a product level, but I'm blanking on the name now. I think it's Julie Zoe. It's like Making of a Manager. She came from Facebook, and it's more like managerial, but it's about that, like, ways as a company is growing from a product side of managing a team and like being a first-time manager, because eventually as you're growing and you're trying to scale, you're going to take on a role that may be new in terms of managing people, and really understanding how do you do that at scale, and how do you manage people for the first time. I thought that was really beneficial.
Nice. Patrick?
Yeah, I think for me, I haven't done as much reading on this, as I just have kind of some battle scars and wounds along the way, a couple of successes. But one book that I have read, in addition to Lean Startup, which I'm sure most people have listened or read or listened to, is this book called Inspired by Marty Kagan, I think is how you say his name. But the topic is really about creating tech products that customers love. And that's something that is worth a listen there. So I'm still on audio here, but I think I might have just dropped off the video. But yeah, that's a good book. It's called Inspired. So definitely check that one out.
That's good. Good. All right. Well, we'll make sure to do links to those in the show notes. And I guess just last question, if people are curious to learn from the two of you, or just want to follow the work that the two are up to, where can people find you online?
So LinkedIn is probably the best place for me. So Kiel Sanders, spelled Kiel. That's probably the best place for me. There's probably not a whole lot of Kiel Sanders with my spelling of the name, so it should be easy to find.
Cool.
That's good. And I'm just at patricklounge.com. I've got some blogs up there about my experience. I need to get some more content around this topic of product management. So
please,
hope to post more on that.
Good. Well, gentlemen, this has been extremely insightful. There's a number of immediate people that I know I want to share this episode with. And so really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Patrick.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Will.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you in your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it would be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.